We're going to jump back into the story of Avinu Malkeinu that we remember from yesterday, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva playing out in this story where Rabbi Eliezer makes this attempt to stop the drought by following the rule book, by doing the special Amida with 24 blessings, the 18 regular blessings of the normal weekday Amida in the ancient times, and then an additional 6 blessings for the fast. And then it doesn't work. And then Rabbi Akiva comes down. He says 2 lines of Avinu Malkeinu, presumably a spontaneous prayer that he writes in the moment. Avinu Malkeinu ein lanu melech elata, our Father, our King, we have no king but you. Avinu Malkeinu rachem aleinu, our Father, our King, have mercy on us, and the rain comes down. And then everybody starts to go against Rabbi Eliezer, it seems like, and a heavenly voice comes out and says, it's not that Rabbi Akiva is greater than Rabbi Eliezer, rather, Rabbi Akiva is ma'avir al midotav, and Rabbi Eliezer is Eino ma'avir al midotav. It's not totally clear what that meant, because we think of a midah as a positive thing, and so Rabbi Akiva, who is passing over his attribute, you would think, you want to have a positive attribute, you don't want to pass over it, but it's clearly whatever midah means, it's a negative thing. Rabbi Akiva is able to overcome it, and Rabbi Eliezer is not able to overcome it. And that's, as I was saying yesterday, the embodiment of the prayer leader matters in terms of the effectiveness of the prayer. It's not really about reciting particular magical words. It's about how you stand before God and represent a certain set of behaviors. So what I wanted to look at today is just another understanding, a deeper understanding of Ma'avir Amidotav before we look at the next story that we find in a parallel in the Yerushalmi in the Jerusalem Talmud. Again, I'm just going to show you the end of the story that we looked at yesterday. Yatzta bat kol v'amra. Heavenly voice comes out and says, not that this one is greater than that one, not that Rabbi Akiva is better than Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, Rabbi Akiva is Ma'avir al midotav, and Rabbi Eliezer is Eino Ma'avir al midotav. So let's take a look at another source that's trying to unpack what is Ma'avir al midotav. So we have in the in another place in the Talmud, Rava says, Kol ha-ma'avir al midotav, ma'avirin al kol lo al kol psha'av. Whoever passes over his midot, still not totally clear what that means. Rashi's going to help us. Whoever has this attribute, which seems to be a good thing, to pass over your midot. So if you do that, then all of your sins are passed over. There's some sort of mirroring. If I pass over my midot, my negative attributes, then God is going to pass over my sins from me. There's going to be some mirroring above. And then it quotes the verse from Micha, Nosei avon ve'over al pesha, right? God is going to bear the sin and the iniquity and pass over the sin, over al pesha. God is going to ignore the crime that you've committed. And so that's the way in which you are, you're sort of influencing God above by the Ma'avir al midotav action below. Now Rashi is going to try to explain this for us. What is Ma'avir al midotav? And he's going to play with the language here. We think of midah as a positive attribute, but he's going to emphasize the negative side of the word midah, which means to measure, literally to measure. So he says, Ma'avir al midotav. What is somebody who is Ma'avir al midotav? He's not giving in to the instinct to midaktek limdod midah la mitzarimoto. He's not being somebody who is really careful to measure out and size up the ones who are bothering him, and he sort of sets aside his measurements and just goes on with life. I think this is sort of a great orientation to what it means to be Ma'avir al midotav, right? Usually we're judging people, we're sizing people up, we're making our own calculations, as it were, about our relationship to those who are bothering us, and we can't let that go. But Rashi's saying that the one who is Ma'avir al midotav, he gives that all aside. He gives that up. He passes over his measuring instincts, his judging instincts, and sort of lets things be. So Rabbi Eliezer can't do that. He's Eino Ma'avir al midotav, but Rabbi Akiva is Ma'avir al midotav. So he's embodying this ability to just let it go, to set aside my instinct to measure others and to size them up and to judge them. That's not how I'm going to be. And as a result of him embodying that characteristic, Rabbi Akiva brings the rain. Okay, I wanted to look at this other story in the Yerushalmi, which is sort of the parallel to the one that we have looked at yesterday and continue to look at today. So we have a similar situation. There's a drought, and you have Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer made a fast, but no rain fell. Rabbi Akiva made a fast, and the rain fell. Okay, so that's the whole plot of the story right there, which is to say a similar dynamic that we saw in the Babylonian version of the story, that there's a drought. Rabbi Eliezer does the prescribed solution. It doesn't work. Here, Rabbi Akiva, instead of sort of coming up with a spontaneous prayer, here he is doing the prescribed solution, which is the fast, and it does work. Either way, again, the teacher, Rabbi Eliezer, fails, and the student, Rabbi Akiva, doing pretty much the same thing, succeeds. So in the Bavli, that led to everybody sort of shouting and yelling against Rabbi Eliezer and sort of saying, like, what gives? Why couldn't you get the job done? Whereas Rabbi Akiva does get the job done. In the Bavli, that shouting, that accusation against Rabbi Eliezer is answered by the heavenly voice saying, I'm just telling you the reason why this worked. But here in the Yerushalmi, we don't get a heavenly voice that's defending Rabbi Eliezer. We get Rabbi Akiva himself. Rabbi Akiva is going to defend Rabbi Eliezer by telling a parable, which is a bit of a disturbing parallel, and we're going to see why he would tell this disturbing parallel. So he says, Rabbi Akiva entered and said before them. So again, there's sort of like an anonymous crowd that is here. Rabbi Akiva is going to address them. And he says, I'm going to tell you like a parable. What's this like? It's like a king who had two daughters. One of them was Chatzufa, one of them was Chutzpahdik, and one of them was Kshera, one of them was kosher. Okay, so in the metaphor here, God is the king, usually the way in these parables, God is the king, and two daughters, one of them is Chutzpahdik, one of them is kosher. Now, one of them is going to be Rabbi Akiva, one of them is Rabbi Eliezer. Let's see how it works. So when the Chutzpahdik one wanted to enter before the king, when the Chutzpahdik daughter wanted to come before the king and ask for something, the king would say, give her what she wants so that she may go away, right? If you ask for something and I'm the king, I'm saying, sure, take it, just get out of my face. I don't want to see you. But when the kosher one, when the proper one wanted to enter before the king was patient because he liked hearing her pleas. Mitchamad mishmoa shabata. He really liked to hear her crying out. Now, let's just unpack the parable for a second before we get to the end of the story, which is important. So the parable seems to indicate that when does the parent, or the king, in this case, who's both a king and a parent, when does that parent respond to you and answer your requests? When he doesn't favor you, right? The only time when your request is heard is if the king is trying to reject you. I just want you to go away. Here, take, it's like someone's, a kid's, annoying you for a piece of candy. Here, take the candy and go away. Just move on. But what about the daughter that he loves, the daughter he prefers? Oh, well, that daughter, he's not going to answer her prayers because he actually just likes to hear her ask for things. He likes her to be in his presence. And it's a way of keeping her with him to not respond to her prayer. Okay. Now, this, may have some relationship to reality in terms of parent-child dynamics, but it's not really a great theology. Like the theology that's being spelled out here is, if you want your prayers to be answered, that's a sign that you're rejected. And if your prayers aren't answered, that's a sign that you're loved by God. This is not something, that's not a religion that a lot of people are going to sign up for. And the Talmud is aware of that and immediately says, the Ichari Meimorkain, is it really possible to say this? Can you really say that God responds to the ones that are chutzpahdik, but God doesn't respond to the kosher people, to the people who are fitting? God really just wants to hear their pleas. No, implied answer, no, that's not the way it is. So why did Rabbi Akiva tell this story with this sort of perverse theology built in? Rather, it was to prevent blasphemy of the house of Rabbi Eliezer. Rather, Rabbi Akiva was telling this whole tale about how Rabbi Akiva ends up being the chutzpahdik one because he's answered, and Rabbi Eliezer becomes the kshera one because he's not answered. The reason he tells the whole story is to prevent Rabbi Eliezer's house from being blasphemed, to prevent Rabbi Eliezer from having the criticism that we see also in the Babylonian Talmud story. That's something that Rabbi Akiva wants to jump in and sort of nip in the bud. So he sort of sacrifices a theologically sound, system in order to do that, all to say that he's really trying to defend Rebbe Eliezer. He's not gloating. He's not saying, look, I'm the young Turk. I've got the job done. I know how to stop the drought. You can't teach me anymore. That's not what's happening here. The dynamic is Rebbe Eliezer is being defended by Rebbe Akiva. And as we're going to see, the relationship between Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Eliezer, surrounding with the metaphor of water that we're seeing in these stories, is developed further in some other stories that we're going to look at tomorrow. So just to sort of take us to where we are today, in the Yerushalmi story, we have Rebbe Akiva defending Rebbe Eliezer, not a heavenly voice defending him, but Rebbe Akiva defending him. And this is perhaps another expression of the behavior that Rebbe Akiva brings into the world that allows God to sort of see what's going on in terms of his modeling, in terms of Rebbe Akiva's modeling, and then respond with mercy. So we're gonna jump into the deeper connection between Rebbe Akiva and Rebbe Eliezer tomorrow, and then on Friday we're going to do Avinu Malkeinu, what those terms mean in rabbinic understanding.